What's up, folks? I want to talk to you today about a combination of bullying and bad parenting. What I'm really talking about is early influences you had in the social realm, as in influences from other people, that harmed you, traumatized you, and how they affect you today. What I'm going to be talking about is something I call legacy. See, for any of you who had critical parents or neglectful parents or abusive parents, or this same kind of behavior but from peers in high school, or maybe from a priest, or maybe from teachers, or maybe from somebody else in your family, there's somebody in your past that treated you very poorly, bullied you in some way. I want you to notice how that still affects you even though this person may not still be around, or even if they are still in your life, how most of the time they're nowhere near you. So even if you've got a particularly critical parent who you hold to account for you having low self-worth, notice how most of the time they're not around, and yet the low self-worth remains. When I say legacy, what I mean is that somebody did some harmful things to you, said some harmful things, made you feel bad about yourself. And now you're doing that work for them. They're no longer around. They no longer have to put any effort into that bullying. It's implanted in your head like a computer virus, a line of code that keeps spitting out criticism, that keeps suggesting self-sabotaging behavior, that keeps telling you you're not good enough, and you're actually doing that work for them. They don't have to do it anymore. This is what I call legacy, and it's amazing how obvious it is to outside observers like myself when I'm working with clients, and yet to the person themselves who's carrying on this legacy, they can't see it. So somebody might spend their entire 20s going, oh, I'm such a loser, I'm not good enough, nobody loves me, without really consciously understanding they're saying the same words that the bully said, or the parent said, or whomever originally said these words. They're carrying on, quite often word for word, verbatim, or at least a theme of not good enough, too fat, too tall, awkward, weird, whatever it is that you were called and bullied and punished for. And it took me a while to understand this. I'm like, why is it that we could continually carry on the work, do the effort for somebody else, and have it harm us, and yet not be able to see that this is a pointless effort that we make? We have to actually try quite hard to harm ourselves. We are essentially bullying ourselves at this point. And we have to put in the same amount of work that the bully did, except now we're doing that work for them. They can just sit at home, rest. They might not even be alive anymore, and you're still doing that work for them. I came to realize the problem is the voice in your head is always your own voice. It might be the words of your critical mother or of that bastard at your school, but now it's speaking in your voice and you think it's you. You think yourself is just giving you feedback, that you're just accurately assessing who you are as a person, without realizing actually before the other person put these ideas in my head, I was kind of okay with being me. Maybe I was a little shy before I got to school, but it was only after school that I started calling myself a loser. I didn't do that before I met the bully. I might have always been a bit of a perfectionist, but I wasn't really critical and harsh with myself about failures until after my parents did it with my schoolwork. I want you to notice that the voice sounds like you, but it's not your words. It's not your ideas. You are carrying on the legacy of somebody else. You are bullying yourself on their behalf. You're taking over the torture so that they can rest with their feet up, having completely fucked you up for life with only a minimal effort earlier on. Of course, I know for some of you, you'll still be in contact with your bullies. You get like a refresher course every time you spend time with your critical parent or whatever. But then you go home and by yourself you continue their work for them. I also want to point out the pointlessness of even blaming them for this. You see, they're passing on an infection that they received from somebody else. I used to work with a lot of bullies who are now grown-ups. When I worked at the Department of Corrections, I used to rehabilitate violent criminal offenders. Many of them were school bullies when they were younger. Guess what? Every single one of them, and I rehabilitated literally hundreds of them, every single one of them had shitty parents. Neglectful, abusive childhoods. They just passed on that infection to the other kids at school. And as adults, they're now passing it on to their children. So where did their parents get it from? Well, you can be damn sure that their parents also had shitty parents or shitty childhood influences. Once you start going back generations, you see war, you see hard times, technology gets worse and worse, obviously, as you go backwards. The times get harder and harder. When somebody treats you badly, you're seeing the entire evolution of the human race socially coming to a head. You know, when we were first developing alongside Neanderthals, probably we had some of the most awful parenting, harsh, brutal, critical, abusive. And that's been passed on down the ages. Some people had great parents, but they got somebody else's infection from school. The school bully did it to them. By the time you hit about 11, 12, your peers have a bigger influence on you than your parents. There's a lot of good psychology research to back this up. So even if you have great parenting, if you're surrounded by douchebags and losers at high school, you're done for. It'll infect you. You're not critical thinking enough to be able to protect yourself from that stuff. It gets in. But where are you now? Why do you still continue the legacy, despite the fact that you are now sound of mind enough to break the cycle? And no one else can do it for you. All the people that infected you, they're sick. They can't help you. And all the people who have never been infected, they don't know what you're going through, so they can't help you. Only you can break the cycle. How do you break the cycle? It's actually pretty simple. It starts with treating yourself kindly. However it is that you were mistreated, whatever legacy it is you continue, maybe you're critical of yourself, hard on yourself by being a perfectionist, maybe you punish yourself every time you get rejected by somebody, whatever it is you do that's just continuing the legacy of the poor parenting or the bad social influences when you're younger. Do the opposite. Encourage yourself. Treat yourself well. Notice all the aspects of your strengths. Do what you want to do rather than what society seems to force you to want to do. Do something to impress yourself rather than to impress the ghost of your parents. Do something because you want to do it, not to get revenge on the school bully. Let them go. Let the legacy die with you. Treat your children kinder than your parents treated you. Teach them to treat others kinder than the bullies treated you. Break the cycle. The voice in your head sounds like you, but it's not. If it doesn't help you, then it must not be yours, because your brain would never deliberately write a program to make your life worse. Your brain can, however, be infected by someone else's programming. And before the age of 10, definitely, your brain is so underdeveloped that you cannot even block people from infecting you. You have no immunity. There's no vaccination for bullying. You don't have the physical capability in the brain to prevent them from getting in. So by the time you're an adult, it's already in. But it is not permanent. Break the legacy. Be kind to yourself today and every day. Make sure you learn the lesson. Cheers.